This program will start shortly.
To the James Brown African American Room at the Newark Public Library, and to let you all meet the friends of the James Brown African American Room. I think there's about 1, 2, 3, 4 of us here in the room. 5, he's a member, but not a part of the board. But we're an organization that was started in 2016. And I'm the founding member of the Friends of the James Brown African American Room. What we do is try to provide you with information through programs and other events that we try to put on through the course of the year. So if you're not already a friend, we want you to think about becoming a friend and maybe bringing a friend into our fold. We would like you to do all of that. So tonight we have a special program here, and it's going to be facilitated by our own Linda McDonald Carter, who is a friend of JBAAR from its inception, and also an attorney here in Newark, and a professor here in Newark, and a Newark native like me, retired, all those things. Like me, we're retired, but we still work, as you see. So Linda is going to come on, facilitate, and introduce you to our panel. Thank you.
Hi, Linda McDonald Carter. And I think I'll have the gentleman spend a couple of minutes giving their bios. We'll start with Dr. Payne since he's closest to me, and then Mr. Kramer, and then Mr. Muhammad. Can you hear him? Okay.
Dr. Carlton and I am at two state colleges in Philadelphia. I also am chairman for the Social Spectrum College. My primary purpose of working for the city was psych testing, personality, intelligence, education, learning for data. When I was there, a little bit about myself. I was kind of a bright kid in Philadelphia, and I won a scholarship to live in the city. And I went to LaSalle College, and I was a lot skinnier than I am now. So at 6'4", tall and skinny, and on scholarship. What was the question I got at the end?
Do you play basketball?
No, I got so much pressure from my coach, I dropped the best. But I could do knock people down. But on our team was a guy who was 7 feet 2 inches tall. He could shoot your believer. But he got 4 years at the cell, and he was drafted by the Boston Celtics, sight unseen. Can't go against everything. Big hands, big feet, right? He was so bad, he was on court, he put a ball in the face. But they flew him and his family up to Boston, first class, put him in a 4-star hotel. And after one day, and back then they didn't have to take contracts. They had nothing, 1 year guaranteed contract, right? After 1 day of practice, they gave him $160,000. Yeah. I said it. First day, here comes this young man, young black, 7 feet tall, in prison uniform, walking toward me. Back, took him my arm. I said, what are you doing? Hey, I'll get you a tryout. This is what he did. Anybody remember the eight-ball jacket?
Mm-hmm.
He had an 8-ball jacket, he turned it inside out, and he picked up this woman at 8 p.m. Put a stocking mask over his head. And then take the mask, throw it in the trash, turn the jacket around, right away, and just walk down the street. He said, Dr. Penn, I'm gonna beat this case because they said the guy was wearing a mask. How would they know it was me? Did you saw me? He did not see himself. He didn't know who he was. So I asked this question. About everybody has.
Okay, do me a favor, make sure your mic is green. So, and then speaking to the mic. Okay, Mr. Kramer.
My name is Bernard Creamer. I appreciate you all having me here. Linda, for inviting me to Newark. It's my first time in Newark, and so far so good.
He was born in New Jersey, though. Go ahead.
I was actually born in Fort Dix, so this is my first time back in New Jersey since being born. But I'm enjoying just being in the library and just kind of taking it all in. And it's funny, I was looking at the agenda and I kept seeing James Brown. And so, of course, I'm thinking James Brown, the entertainer. I'm like, why is she focused so much on James Brown? But then I made it over here to the case and I found out who James Brown was, and I'm gonna do a little bit more research. So I appreciate just that piece. I'm a career educator. I've worked with kids all my life in the context of being an educator, being an assistant principal, being a dean. I'm also an activist, part of 2 organizations, the Nubian Leadership Circle and the National Black Leadership Alliance, which is out of New York. I'd asked one of the brothers if they knew who Bob Law was, but we do a lot of work with them in terms of trying to get this music off the radio that's pretty much saturating our kids' subconscious with all this poison, all this toxicity. But that's a lot of the work that I do. I'm also an author. I wrote this book here, Who Stole the Soul, The Weaponization of Hip Hop. It deals with hip hop, but it also deals with a whole bunch of other societal issues that we're dealing with as Africans in this country, namely culture. I think culture is very important. So we deal with that piece, but that's pretty much it. Educator, activist, author. Looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, Mr. Muhammad.
Yeah, my name is Henry D. Muhammad Hamilton. I'm native Newark, New Jersey. I'm a professional in long-term recovery. And what that means is that for 37 years, I haven't had a drug or a drink. I haven't been incarcerated. I haven't smoked a cigarette in 25 years. As a result of that, today I'm a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor. I have agencies in New Jersey, Florida, Georgia, and we're now in negotiating with doing our programs in Ghana, the Cote d'Ivoire, and in Haiti. So my story basically is one from tragedy to triumph. I can remember Brother James Brown in this very library, talking with him and studying in this library while he was here. So I'm honored to be here and basically to talk about, the weaponization of hip hop from not only a clinical perspective, but I'm also a recording artist and concert performer. I sing classic soul R&B, and I have a group called the Silver Stars, and we've opened up for many of the great classic soul artists like the Whispers, Blue Magic, and I know some of you too young to know who these people are, but the Whispers, Ray Gum and the Brown, Blue Magic, the Temptations Review, and a lot of those brothers passed on. But as it relates to the weaponization of hip hop, I also see how they weaponized, the culture of classic soul R&B. And I'm going to speak to that from a clinical perspective as it relates to drug addiction, alcoholism, and the glamorization of those things in terms of the devastation of our community and our artists. That's pretty much a good summation of my bio.
But he forgot something.
What did I
We
forget?
have a long history.
Oh,
went-
yeah,
I went to school with his brother from the 4th grade forever. So we
right.
have a very long history, and we're also from Scudder Homes Housing Project. I think that's
Yes, thank you.
very important. So I just
Yeah,
wanted to say that.
thanks.
Before we get started, just to give a little background about Black music, and most of you know, Black music was our superpower. It was initially a tool of resistance for Black people as they came through from the kidnapping, I should say, the capture to the kidnappings and going through the transatlantic slave or a chattel slave system. But it permitted our survival for 600 years, 400 years in this North America and 600 years on Turtle Island, which is the actual, what the indigenous people call from the tip of Canada to the end of South America. First, it provided us with sanity. It served as a means of communication between us. As I said, it was our superpower. It also served as the literature for the masses. It also showed us, and it provided a lot of things, like you could learn how to have a relationship, a healthy relationship from the music. Literally, sometimes I tell people that you could actually probably be raised on Black music if you didn't have a family and all you would need was food, because it was so practical and it was so useful to us to help us get through. But what happened is I heard this book, The Legacy, not the legacy, but the weaponization of hip hop. And then I found out, and I'm not sure Mr. Kramer's going to talk about it, that Harvard University did a report in 1972. I encourage everybody to look at this report. There's something, a really interesting passage. It said that music executives could expand the market for spirituals and gospel and soul music. And so it kind of suggested that we're on our way to the co-optation of our music that's always served us. Not only that, it was about people who had no stake in our culture, our history, and our social conditions, who would be controlling the music that we listened to and relied on for so long to get us through and to maintain our sanity. And some of the music, I'm not going to sing. That's the last thing I want to do. But I do want to raise some of the music for you to think about, and I'll be doing it throughout. First of all, for a lot of people, a lot of young people, they don't know, they've never heard to be young, gifted, and Black, right? Young, gifted, and Black. Oh, what a lovely, precious dream to be young, gifted, and Black. Open your heart to what I mean in the world, or the whole world, you know. There's a million boys and girls who are young, gifted, and Black, and that's a fact. You are young, gifted, and Black. We must begin to tell our young, there's a world waiting for you. Yours is the quest that just begun. When you feel really low, yeah, there's a great truth that you should know. When you're young, gifted, and Black, your soul's intact. To be young, gifted, and Black, oh, how I long to know the truth. There are times when I look back and I'm haunted by the youth. Oh, but my joy of today is that we can all be proud to say, to be young, gifted, and Black. Some of us take that for granted because we've heard that. But there's a lot of young people never heard that there's something called to be young, gifted, and Black. The next one, and then we're going to start with the panelists. Another James Brown, the one you were referring to. Watch your bad self. Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud. Say it louder. I'm Black and I'm proud. Look at here. Some people say we got a lot of malice. Some say it's a lot of nerve. But I say we won't quit moving until we get what we deserve. We've been bucked and we've been scorned. We've been treated bad, talked about as sure as you were born. But just as sure as it takes two eyes to make a pair, brother, we can't quit until we get our share. James Brown. On that note, we're going to move to the panelists and have them respond to a couple of questions. So I gave them the questions already. But, you know, and we're going to try to have enough time to take questions from the audience and from Facebook, if at all possible. So the first one goes to Dr. Payne. Oh, I'm sorry. The first one goes to Bernard Kramer. Wanted you to provide an overview of the highlights of your book. What happened to the soul I put in music, the weaponization of hip hop. So if you can talk a little bit about that, and then afterwards, what you consider is the damage of individuals not having a stake or appreciation for the cultural, historic, and social significance of our music.
You might have to
I know, remind
restate
you.
the last part, but
Go ahead.
the book is basically Who Stole the Sword, Weaponization of Hip Hop. It's a culmination of a little bit over a decade of doing workshops with youth and community centers talking about the subject. Like I literally have a PowerPoint presentation I've been doing for over a decade. And I've even gone in as a as a spook who sat by the door in my classrooms and gotten in trouble teaching this stuff in my classrooms as a history teacher. And so I always find room to teach them media literacy, the use of propaganda, the co-option of our culture and the commercialization of our culture within the context of teaching history to our kids. And they love it because they listen to rap music. That's literally their lives. Like hip hop is literally the largest cultural phenomenon on the planet right now. Hip hop, everything is done through that vein. And so what better way to teach our kids than through something that they love? And so I do it through the context of culture. I talk about the music. I talk about the history of hip hop, where it started, the roots of it, even talking about disco, house music. But I go even beyond that. And I talk about how it's historically the powers that be, the establishment, capitalism, has always found a way to basically take what we create in our neighborhoods or to basically reflect our realities and find a way to commercialize it, package it up for them to profit from it, and then sell it back to us as something that's not healthy for our subconscious. Me and Linda, what was it? No, it wasn't me and Linda, but it was me and one of the other guests. We were talking about how gradually we allowed them to remove instruments from our classrooms in school. We allowed that. We didn't put up enough of a fight. And so our kids are not even asking for real music. They're not even demanding it. And if you turn on the radio, there is no real music being played on the radio. Speaking of capitalism, the owners of the system, or the owners of these record industries, they knew that if they could just will it down to something where it was all about personas and characters and nothing about the music, nothing about the lyrics, nothing about the music, nothing about the culture, no substance, no breakdancing, no art through graffiti, they could control it. And so now each one of these, how should I call it, record heads or record labels, they have a producer, somebody that basically is on a board making electronic noises that are not instruments, and they have a team of rappers. And all of these rappers are disposable because you don't have to have talent now. You can literally get on a microphone and just say B words, N words, I'll kill you, do this drug, go buy this, and that's a whole album. And so that's literally what they're selling to our kids now. And as an educator, I'm seeing the impact of this music is getting worse and worse and worse. And I don't dump on the kids and I don't dump on their music because we listened to NWA and Mobb Deep, Compton's Most Wanted. We didn't know any better as kids. Even before that, we had the blaxploitation era, 10 years of movies calling us N words and B words. And we didn't protest that until like after 10 years. Even before that, we had Birth of a Nation. We had that movie that pretty much degraded and devalued us. So it's not something that just started with hip hop, but right now with hip hop being the most powerful medium on the planet right now, what better way than to basically degrade and devalue a whole generation of children than through the music they love? And so 2023, we look up and we literally unconsciously call each other N words and B words. And I find myself correcting Black men around, me when I'm talking about using the B word to describe or to identify sisters. Like every time it comes out their mouth, I correct it until they get tired of it. It took me 7 years, and I counted, to stop using the N word because it was so saturated into my subconscious. It was like breathing, to look at a Black man and call him the N word without even thinking about it. And if you study the history of the word, you know where it came from. So now we consider it a term of endearment. We act like we own it, and we don't. When you're killing somebody or you're thinking about abusing somebody, the first word that flies out of your mouth is that hatred term. And so to think about the pervasiveness of it, I've taught in Dallas, I've taught in Chicago, and I'm now teaching in DC. In Dallas, I had to deal with white kids and Hispanics calling each other the N-word and calling Black kids the N-word. And so I had to correct all three races about using the N-word. And it was like, Mr. Creamer, why are you tripping? But we not even tripping. And I'm 53 years old, so we're not tripping about it. And we act like, again, it's a term of endearment. It's something that we can just dismiss as just a word, but we understand the power of words if we're really thinking about it when we do the research. As a psychologist, I know he knows. I know my brother over here knows the power of words. That you can get people, how can I put it? You can turn on the radio and you don't hear any other racial group being degraded using the word, the derogatory word that describes them. It's just us. And we're only 13, 14% of the population. So how is it that 99% of the music that uses the defamatory word to describe a race is us? Okay, 13, 14% of the population. It's functional. And you know, the book actually talks about capitalism. It talks about wealth distribution. It talks about the creation of poverty. And it talks about basically the ownerships of mediums of information and the control of information to basically maintain the status quo. We're at the very bottom as African people. At the very top is an elite group of white people. And they need information to be disseminated in a way that basically maintains that stratification. So it's done through the music, it's done through television, it's done through movies, it's done through the schools. And the last piece I'll add, as a history teacher, history didn't used to be on the standardized test. And so now they include it on the standardized test to make sure that they know, they're acutely aware of what as a history teacher I'm teaching in my class. So even as a history teacher, I can't keep a job because I'm always violating the curriculum. Because their curriculum is literally teaching George Washington was a hero, Jefferson was a hero, everybody was a hero except for our heroes. And so I gotta violate the curriculum. I gotta basically say, I don't really care about your standardized test, and you know, I gotta deal with that. But as a history teacher, how do we have people not only downstate, but literally in Texas that decide what we teach nationwide because they're the ones that are printing the books. All right, so it's not even just the music, but I utilize the book to basically start from the micro and expand to the macro being capitalism, the profit motive, us being basically the cash cows in this country.
It's interesting you talk about the name because back in the day, you were brother and sister. It makes it very difficult to kill somebody that you call brother or sister. To move from that. I actually heard a hip hop historian, Paradise Gray, which you probably know, and he talked about the elements of hip hop, which you mentioned. But even before then, to look at rap, because it existed since we've been here, right? Dead Poet Society, that's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about Gil Scott Heron, right? I mean, it goes back in terms of our culture. So if you could speak to the different elements, the DJs, the graphics, right? Also the breakdancing and about rap, because all of that falls under hip hop, but it's sort of separate. So you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yep. Hip hop, from my research, from what I've grasped, and I'm open to correction, started with the DJing, Cool G, DJ Herc, basically brought in the rapper to rap over the break beats. Then you had the break B-boys who were breakdancing. You also had the graffiti. And then eventually the fifth element, I said the four, right? I said four.
DJs, breakdance, rap, and the graphics.
And
And what-
beatboxing, I could throw that in there. That's something I argue with somebody about. But beatboxing is definitely part of it. The fifth element for me was basically knowledge itself. When rappers started talking about our history, talking about, you know, our ancestry, making us want to go grab those books and read about our heroes. Those are the elements that I basically grasped as a youth. And again, we had the street element too, a reflection of our reality on the street. But for the most part, I gravitated as a kid to the public enemies, the poor righteous teachers, because they made me want to know about myself. They had us rocking the medallions, the African symbols and all of that, getting into our culture. We were doing all of that, listening to the music. They made me want to go learn who these people were. And so speaking of the elements, you think about the rap groups, like the Furious Five, you know, all of those groups, the Sugar Hill Gang, you got to pay all them people, the rappers, and you had to pay a real DJ and a breakdancer. So as a group, you got to pay all of them people. If you're thinking about it from a capitalist context, once they took over, they're not paying all those people. They're looking to make a profit. So you can't make a profit until you whittle down these groups until it's just a lyricist that you control. All right.
What about, and you talked about the music, because what I heard Paradise Gray talked about was that it was curated in the Bronx. And the fact that you have people, Cubans, Black people, Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans, you had all these people that kind of came together for that purpose. I mean, not for the purpose, it just ended up coming from them. And you're talking about the payment, which is interesting because not until you started learning, it was hip hop was beginning to encourage people to learn about themselves.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, and here comes gangster rap.
Mm-hmm. And gangster rap had been there, but it was more of a, I want to call it was underground back then. Like you had to go find Just Ice, groups like that. Even KRS-One before he started teaching us was what was it? Criminal Minded was his the CD I remember. It was a good CD, you know, as a kid. I mean, that's a classic. But he wasn't talking about nothing but gunplay and selling drugs and that sort of thing on there until he finally started pushing knowledge to us. But as kids, at least we had balance. Whereas, you know, the mainstream, the main dish was conscious music, party music, make you feel good music. Whereas the little side dish was the violence, you know, the street element and all of that stuff. And so it flipped, they flipped the paradigm on us. And now the main dish is pretty much chitlins and hog maws. That's it. No vegetables, no nothing. You know what I mean? You pretty much eat this, you subsist from this. And we see the manifestations on the street in these schools. You know, with our kids don't respect the community. They don't respect the elders. And it's not all of them, but it's a whole bunch of them. Even the ones we think are little sweethearts that we send off to school, when they come in my classroom, I got to correct their language. You know what I mean? Regularly. So it's out there. But was there another question that you had added to that? Okay.
Before we go to Dr. Payne, who's going to talk about, Dr. Payne is going to talk about the industry and its connection to the prison industry, right? And also pornography in the business. So I have to say this about James Brown, the other James Brown artist. James Brown would say, going back to the value of our music, I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door. I'll get it myself. Don't give me integration and gain my truly look. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door. I'll get it myself. Dr. Payne.
I was in second grade. My parents thought they were doing me a favor, and it's all white students. Black people in school. I happened to get this one teacher.
Speak up. Speak up.
All right. I happened to get this one teacher who didn't know black kids in class. And she said to me that all your people wanted a handout. Well, in the summertime, right before school break, called May Day, you could bring whatever records you want to play for all the other students in the playground. And that's the record I wrote that. Say, I want to you. No. First thing, here, and I'm very proud to play the serve on the panel. We went to a seminar on anti-violence, the anti-violence summit, where I was a guest speaker. And one of the consensus opinions was we'd stop our children from telling them what you see in front of you. Responsible, mature, black men, big programs. So that would be a big change in our children. Then now with the question. Does television media impact on and since I'm at the college, I'm going to do a little exercise with you. Okay? I begin the sentence, you can just say it out loud. You can, okay? M&M's melt in your mouth.
None in your hand.
Tuesday mothers choose. What is Arnold Schwarzenegger? You're saying,
I'll be what?
you know this stuff because television is a passive activity. It goes right past my television and radio. It goes right past they want. Okay. Give you another. What did Clint Eastwood's famous tagline? Make my death. Right. Movie Jerry Maguire. What's the tagline for Jerry Maguire? Oh, see, you know that stuff. It's planted in your mind. Okay. It's called psychoacoustics. Logical term. Emotional, auditory perception. How what you see and hear makes you feel. Now in World War II, I'm not trying to get technical, but in World War II, they can only get 15% of the soldiers killed. They wouldn't do it. So they decided to new way to get these young people to kill. First of all, they started drafting 18 to 24. Okay? See how impressionable people are. Now, what's the average age of people in college? 16 to 24. The average age of people in prison is 24. Like a lot of people in the military is between 18 and 24. When a man becomes first-time father, he's between ages 18 and 24. That's a very impressionable age, and that's why they wanted that draft. Okay? So they knew that that person was more impressive. By the Vietnam, and they started using music. They played music in the tent, Black Sabbath. And they interviewed some of the soldiers. When we heard their music, we just come everything that moved. So you see the impact of music on behavior. Music is the water, and the lyrics are the field. That's how Ashton was done to you. Yeah? Now, very interesting. Most music is on, it's 4 beats per measure. Most music is on 2 and 4 beats, right? Michael Jackson, boom, boom, boom. Everything's on 2 and 4 beats, right? Along comes this guy named Frank Sinatra, he put it on 1 and 3. Okay? Boom, 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 boom. I loved it. Oh, this guy made it famous. Rap music is on all 4 beats. Boom, 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 driving rhythm. And it's called dactylic hexameter, beat of your heart. They've known this for centuries. Shakespeare used to write in hexameter. Rhythms, how thoughts in the beat of your heart. And guess what other writer writes on the heartbeat? Dr. Seuss. Mm-hmm. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like green ham. And the kid makes it very simple and easy to digest. So I, as a psychologist, can control your behavior. There's a 30-second spot for Super Bowl this year. For 30 seconds, $6.2 million. Why? Because they know they can move. You better buy this kind of deodorant, or you're never gonna get a date. You better buy this kind of soap. You know? NaCl, sodium chloride, is salt, right? When you add 1 extra molecule, NaClO, guess what you have? Bleach. They make gallons and gallons of bleach. Okay? The bleach that you get at the dollar store is the same exact stuff as the label. You're not getting anything different. But I had a woman arguing down. Clorox is better.
Commercials.
Just saying they make gallon tanks of it, and they put it in the But Clorox. It's up here. It's in the mind. So we're trying to solve problems. Find this up here. Let's get out. If I got a spot on my suit and I wipe off the mirror, that's not going to do it. We're trying to attack the reflection. We need more cops. We need more prisons. We need more cameras. No, we need to change the way we think. I hate to tell you this, but our people, and this is psychology, our people were damaged. 240 years of slavery, 96 years of Jim Crow. We were psychologically damaged, and we see the world with different eyes. We don't see each other as brothers like our generation. We see that as the enemy. A lady called, I was working in the family court. A lady called looking for a husband. I said, can you describe it? Well, he wears Jordans. That's our description of him. It tells you what the mindset is, okay? When I first started working in prison, I asked a question. I said, what's the most important thing in the world? Working in prison. The first question always was freedom. Guess what this generation, the first question answer always is? Money costs more than freedom. Okay? There was, when I was in college, there was a video. That's a thing. You'll conspire science, brilliant man. You know the video of Africa, Senegal. It was game wardens versus poachers. two groups of black men fighting each other, killing each other. Okay? The gang wardens were trying to stop coaches from taking the elephant cut. Now, we did research. We found that the coaches were sending all the material to a fur training company. Okay? They were paying them. They would get automatic weapons. And the gang wardens said, we're overmatched. The government won't give us any funding. So guess who gave them money? And import, export company said, we'll give us money for automatic weapons. That way you get money. Okay? And it was a battle between two groups of black men raging. They did research and they found that the import export company owned the fur trade. So they were supplying the weapons and cleaning up as black men were killing each other. How is there any difference that's going on in this country? Change your mind and you change the world. Now, there's a company called Vanguard. They own the ET and MTV. They are also the #1 owner of Disney.
Look them up.
Yep.
Do your own homework. Look them up.
Okay? When they started privatizing prison, they had a stipulation in their contract. We will buy your prison and privatize it. A government-owned prison comes for your money. We pay for it, okay? $450. It was $150 a day. $4,500 a year to house the prison. Okay? Now, they said, we'll take it, we'll cut it in half, and we'll save the government money. But the stipulation has to be that each prison is 90% full. Where did they get that 90% from? 10 years ago, the governor showed me a prospectus for a prison was going to be built in Phoenix, Pennsylvania. Okay? Maybe 15 years ago then. He said it's going to finish in 10 years. On the day it was, the prison would house 18 to 20, 40-year-olds. The youngest of which 10 years pregnant was how old? 8. They already had a bed ready for that 8-year-old when he turned 18. Okay? I was flown down to Texas to speak on what's called the third grade to prison pipeline. They were preparing jail cells based on the attendance record and the grades of children in 3rd grade. How old was this kid in 3rd grade? 8. I was saying, what's going on here? Anybody heard Juwanza Kajuku?
Yes.
Prominent psychologist.
Yes.
He coined the term called this 3rd grade failure syndrome. From kindergarten to the end of 2nd grade, black children are among the highest achievers in the country. And they fall off at 3rd grade, 8 years old. What happened? I started doing research in it. I said, 8 years old is the age when he starts to get the image of himself, who he's going to be. If before that, they start sounding with their parents. The parents said, who you going to vote for? I'm going to vote for this person. But when they get old, they get around 8 years old. Well, I think, what my teacher said, they start thinking for themselves at 8 years old. And that's a very vulnerable age. Okay? And I call this the meteor technique. Okay, it was an old movie called Armageddon. With Bruce Willis. It was a meteor coming toward Earth. And they flew out to the meteor and they blew it up to redirect it out here. Because you change the trajectory out here, by the time it gets to the planet, it'll be all the way over here. But if you wait till it gets within the Earth's gravitational pull, you can't stop it. The 8 years old is the key age. That's what you take that into your mind. That's why it goes to an 8-year-old. If you can stop it out here and change it a few degrees, they won't hit that with it. Okay? That's one reason why I'm also in private practice in my area. I want to get that to it. And I know.
Well, I wanted you to talk about the porno industry and then,
Okay.
yeah, because that's important because that business, right?
Are the ones who own the pornography.
Thank you, brother.
So when you see these bump shaking on videos and all that kind of stuff, they're trying to. Guess what generation is not getting it? They're not even killing. If you look on social media, young black males, young black females are at each other's throats. What's going on? Well, like my original premise, I can make you think what I want you to do. I can make you believe what I want you to do. Beliefs and behavior work like an arm and a glove. If you believe you're only going to make it to the 18th birthday, well, get what I want now. Belief and behavior. Change belief, change behavior. So we're focusing on the wrong thing. Okay? So that's again, the portal industry is a real. Now, here's another thing. Why are the prisons built in every state? Up, lower, uneducated Caucasian guys, you got to get to do something, right? So they build a prison. And guess who's going to the prison? You guys go and go to visit your relatives. Okay? And to kind of sum it up, I'm going to work on that. And these long train of buses parked in front of the prison. And all these police ram cars, and all these people with shotguns. What's going on? Going to be that. Well, it cost us $125 a day. They want to do it for $70. We're going to send it up Broadway to church. And that's what they did. They sent 1,000 inmates to save money. And the inmates started writing letters to us. There ain't no black people up here. They call it a wet cell. Oh, y'all wanted them to have a wet cell. What's a wet cell? That's a cell with a bathroom in it. They were putting them in dungeons made out of stone. They were a commodity. The new slavery. Yeah. End to end. I kind of want to put this on you as an audience. In 1970, and just to let you know what's going on, 83% of the United States population were Caucasian. 83%. By 1980, it dropped to 80%. By 1990, it dropped to 75%. By the year 2000, it dropped to 63%. Right now, Caucasians are 63%. What's going on? You will inherit it. Me shall inherit the earth. Okay? I hate to sound like my grandma. I hate to sound like my grandma. One of those things I'm going to do. Now, tell me I'm going long. No, Samson. How did Delilah get Samson to tell him where his strength came from? Was it her beautiful face? Was it her voluptuous body? No. And so it came to pass that she pressed him daily with her words until his soul became vexed. What does it mean the soul became vexed? She nagged him to death. Baby, hey, it's my hand. My wife doesn't all the time. My hand, take the wallet, take my money. I don't care. It's my hand. So just like Brother King was saying, the words mean a lot. What you say, what they hear, that's how you change it.
Okay, good. So at first I was gonna say what's going on, but I'm gonna do mercy, mercy, mercy.
Okay.
Oh, things ain't what they used to be. Where did all the blue skies go? Poison in the wind that blows from the north and south and east. On things ain't what they used to be. Oil wasted on the oceans and upon our seas. Fish full of mercury. Radiation underground and in the sky. Animals and birds who live nearby are dying. Mercy, mercy me. Who's that? What's going on? Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know, we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. We don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know, we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see, oh, what's going on. Mr. Muhammad.
Well, thank you, Dr. Payne and Brother Creamer. I'm honored to be, here on the panel with you two gentlemen. It's really a blessing. I started listening to music when I was like 7 or 8 years old. My parents, the Key family, I don't know if you know, there's a famous gospel artist named John P. Key. He happens to be my first cousin. He's out there with McClurkland and all of those guys. His father and my mother, a brother and sister, and it was about 6 or 7 of them, and they would come together on different holidays, and they would sing harmony in gospel. They would sing gospels in harmony. And, I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, and we would just listen to them harmonize in such beautiful tone and such beautiful melodies. And I didn't know at the time that music was going into my system at that time. And I was going to grow up to be a professional, concert performer and recording artist. So by the time I was 10 to 13 years old, sure enough, I got me a group in the community, the projects that we grew up in. And because, it was a genetic thing, with our family and all of us singing, I found out that I had a voice. And when I would sing, just like, then the effect that their singing had on me and the words of gospel, had on me. When I would sing, we sang R&B, from the beginning, like what's coming, what's going on, and Mercy, Mercy Me. I can remember those songs vividly because those were the songs that influenced our group. Groups like the Temptations, the Four Tops, the Five Stair Steps, Curtis Mayfield. The music was informative. It was conscious. It was about relationships, and those were the songs that I grew up singing. The thing about when we think about the weaponization of hip hop, there was also a weaponization going on with classic soul R&B. One of the things that was glamorized in the entertainment industry at that time was drugs, alcohol, and a lot of, dysfunctional relationships and disrespectful relationships. The woman wasn't respected as she should be by men. And that was part of that, whole, community as you grew up in it. And as a result, by the time I was 13, I became what you call polysubstance dependent. I was doing alcohol, I was doing cocaine, I was doing heroin, I was smoking weed, I was selling it too. But that was all a part of the entertainment industry. If you didn't get high when you went to a recording studio or you went to perform with some of these, performers and stuff, then you was, you were ostracized. You were, you was put, you wasn't a part of what was going down. So I can remember that. And by the time I was 15 years old, I was on my way to prison for a conspiracy to murder, having been a model resident, went to St. Benedict's High School, which was a Catholic high school, a preparatory school, making good grades, playing football. And then I wind up, because of my involvement in that social milieu, I wind up in prison. And my whole adolescence is taken from me. I went in, I was 15 years old. I came home, I was 16 to 17 years old. So when I went to prison, though, I got a chance to study the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when we talk about the knowledge of self, and we talk about Black consciousness, and we talk about, doing for self and knowing your history as a people. I studied that, religion, and I studied Kunjufu and other Black, historians and educators. So that when I came home conscious. But what happened was I came home and I got back into the entertainment industry. And then again, I lost my spiritual self and got back into the drug thing and, alcohol and all of that type of stuff. Until the point where it actually brought me to a point of homelessness, on welfare, and total despair. In fact, the thing that made me go into rehab was the fact that I heard that if you go into rehab, you would get more money on your welfare check than you were getting by not going to rehab. So that was the motivation initially that made me go into rehab. But when I went into rehab, I learned this. The drug addiction, alcoholism is a disease that affects you mentally, spiritually, and physically. And that was the first time I heard that, because I thought that, it was something that everybody did. I thought it was a weakness. I thought it was, just something, it was anything other than a disease. So when I heard that concept, something like the telephone ringing went off in my head. And from that time, which was 1985 to this day, I haven't had a drug or a drink. I went back into the music industry. I've performed with all of the top entertainers in the world. I went to South Africa and performed with Ted Mills and Blue Magic. I got a show with him coming up. And now we have established our own production company to produce our own records, a publishing company. And like I said, I have treatment facilities in 3 states, here in the United States, and now we're working on Ghana. All through this process of recovery through meeting gentlemen like Dr. Payne here, who gave me the word, who gave me the consciousness to change the way I was thinking and believing. And as a result of changing that mindset, they have what they call 12 steps. They say you can't recover by using the escalator or elevator. You got to use the steps. And these steps are principles. They're principles. They're life-changing principles. And the number 12, and I'm a very spiritual person because, like I said, I learned singing from my parents who was gospel artists. So the 12 steps, I made it synonymous to the scripture. Jesus had 12 disciples. Joseph had, 12, there was 12 tribes. There's 12 months in a year. There's 12 planets in the universe, the 9 planets, the sun, moon, and stars, the planets, there's 12. And then there's 12 numbers on the clock that represent a complete circle that represents infinity. So I started putting together the science of recovery. And that's what I've been teaching since as a clinician for the past 40 years and have helped a lot of people as a result of this, because we're taught that in order to keep what you have to give it away. Now, you have a lot of people that's in the professional world that will not share, their history, their past, like I do. And in fact, in the very industry in which I work, they discourage it. They feel as though that a person who has experienced addiction, alcoholism in prison, should not share that with people that are coming into your facility, to get help. But what I do is I use what we call appropriate self-disclosure. And I found out that it to be very effective. But you have to have other tools and other methodologies in order to help in the process. But I know one of the things that they try to do is they try to keep out those of us who have actually experienced, this particular illness from talking about our experience. And like one of the brothers said a few minutes ago, I refuse to go with contemporary value, because I believe that contemporary value is what's keeping our people in the cycle of addiction. It's what's keeping our people down. It's what's keeping our people from growing into the knowledge of who they are so that they can get a greater knowledge and concept of what's really going on with them. And I think that sometimes you need to have a model in front of you to show you that if it has been done by this person, it can also be done by me. I know that helped me through this process, and I use it, and I will continue to use it. And this is why I went to establish my own agencies and my own program so that we can make our own protocols and we could design the programs according to our design that's culturally relative and culturally sensitive to our people in our community, because I believe family first. So I don't know how I got into that discussion, but it's all about music. And I use music as therapy. I think it was music that saved my life. If I was not singing, if I was not entertaining, because one of the questions asked me, how did the people respond, to me when I sing? I mean, and they talk about, them people throwing their pants on the stage and all of that. It's never been like that for me. But one time I can remember I was singing and I had my eyes closed and a woman walked up from the audience and just touched me. And I opened my eyes and I said, what's going on here? But the impact of the singing had such an impact on her. She got up from her seat and she just had to touch me. And I'm saying to myself, what is going on here? But the influence of music on our people and on the world, and this is why I think they use our entertainers and our artists to dumb down and to destroy, our community. And the thing about it is our artists don't even realize it because all they want to do is just try to make a living. They're just trying to get out of poverty. You know what I mean? So it's that unconsciousness of them. And like the doctor said, we have to help them to change the narrative. So now we have a program. I have my partner in the back. We have a program called the Celebrities at Risk Initiative. Where now we're inviting those individuals who are in the industry, and there's a lot of them that have mental health and substance abuse issues. So we're taking it on the road with us to provide those services for them. And the ultimate goal is to establish a state-of-the-art treatment facility for our people, like the Betty Ford Clinic, but we're going to call it prodigal sons and daughters. And if you know the history of the prodigal son and the prodigal daughter, the prodigal son in the Bible, that was the son that the father gave his inheritance to. And he told all of his sons, he said, don't take the money and waste it on wine, women, and drugs, and so on. But this guy, he don't trust what his father's saying, so he goes out and spends his money on wine, women, and so on, until he became a feed of swine and a husk of corn. It broke him down to his knees, and when he got to his knees, he said, wait a minute, man. In my father's house are many mansions. If I just humble myself and go back home, maybe my father will accept me. So when the prodigal son decided to go back home, when the father saw him, the father told the children, get out the fatted calf, put a royal robe on him, give him golden slippers and put a crown on his head and sit him at the head of the table. And the children said, wait a minute, Dad. We listened to what you said. He's the one that went astray. He said, yeah, but what you don't understand is that he was blind, but now he sees. He was dead, but now he's alive. He was lost, but now he's found. See, what I learned in recovery is that you can't light a light with just negative. You got to have negative and positive. You can't know right if you don't know what's wrong. You can't get up if you've never been down, and you can't be sure if you never was unsure. See, some of y'all too young for that joke. But my point is the power of understanding positive and negative and how to use those forces for good is what we have to pass on to our children and to our youth. Because there's always going to be negative, but that don't mean you have to use it for negative purposes. If you balance, you know what they call it, a homeostasis, balance the two forces because they exist and they will always exist. That's about all I got to say at this point.
Trying to get you to sing something for us. Yeah, just a little something, something.
Just a little something, something.
Just a little something, something.
You know, one of my favorite songs is I was, when we first started, singing, there was a song by the 5 Stair Steps, Baby Make Me Feel So Good. I don't know if y'all know that song. There's this girl I think came straight from heaven. I long to know. Now, oh, who has met her? That she's better than expressions of love and soul. Now I thank heaven for this present to me. Her love, it's more than I expected to see. Ooh, baby, makes me feel so good.
And they used to sing in the hallways instead of homes, and the acoustics are better than New Jersey Pat. So we're gonna get ready for questions, but I just gotta do one more. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war, and poverty. Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say, because they're the ones who coming up and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get better if we just let it be. The world won't get no better. We got to change it, just you and me. Wake up the doctors, make the old people well. They're the ones who are suffering and catching all the help. But they don't have so very long before the judgment day. So you want to make them happy before they pass away. Politicians, stop lying. Why don't somebody help the poor people, help the babies? We'll take questions now. Anybody have questions to the mic? Yes. And we here, let's bring the mic.
Yeah, it's to Dr. Payne. You're 63%, okay, of that's the percentage of Caucasians in America right now, and declining. Do you think, and I know probably do, but with the current discussion around the getting rid of Roe versus Wade, I mean, people need to see the connection between that, because it's about 75% of the women that are having abortions are white women. And to raise their numbers, I think that they have to stop abortions. Along with, I know when Christine Whitman, was that her name?
Mm-hmm.
Governor of New Jersey at one time, she talked about jewels in the crown, how young black men were having all these babies like Nick Cannon and counting them as jewels in their crown. Mm. And so they were producing, I mean, black babies were just, every year, the number was ridiculously high, astronomical, thank you. So the incarceration was related to that, bringing down the number of black people being born and bringing up the number of white babies that were being born. And I just think that we ought to make those kind of connections and play our end of the chessboard, as Dr. Welsh.
So like Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Well, my answer is this. In order to understand what's going on around you, you have to look at the difference between the facts and the truth. Sometimes people present facts, but you got to look at the truth. Let me give you an example. Rosa Parks, in 1955, she boarded a bus. The sign above her head read, "Under penalty of law, black sit in the back, white sit in the front." Now, a criminal, if you look at Webster's dictionary, is defined as a person who breaks the law. The second definition is a person who is convicted of breaking the law. Rosa Parks not only broke the law, but she was also convicted of breaking the law. Was Rosa Parks a criminal? The facts and the truth.
Well, that's what that governor in Florida is trying to say. That,
exactly. Don't get caught up in the facts.
She had every right to be arrested.
Look for the truth.
Yeah.
Here's another one. They said that 75% of hip hop is being bought by white children. So what are black people squawking about? Okay. Now I want you to look in the room, and like you said, the population is 61%. Okay. Black people are 12 to 13%. You're in a room. You have 61 Caucasians. You have 13 black people. 75% of the drinks are being bought by the two groups of people. Which one is more likely to get drunk? 13%? or the 61%. Oh, but they're drinking more. They're buying more drinks. The facts and the truth. Always look at the facts and the truth. Here's a third one, and I know I'm long-winded. I'm a professor, so I'm tend to be long. They say blacks only make, they hit us over the head with this one. Blacks only make up 12% of the population, but they make up 46% of the prison population. Okay, Aborigines in Australia only make up 3% of the population, but they make up 60% of the prison population. Native Hawaiians only make up 6% of the population, but they make up 50% of the prison population. Native Canadians, the Cree Indians, they only make up 6% of the Canadian population, but they make up 49% of the prison population. The facts and the truth. You get it?
Yeah.
Look at the whole picture to understand.
We have a question from Facebook, and then I'll take yours, Ali.
All right, just want to thank y'all and actually everybody for joining us tonight, and all of our followers who've joined in online on the Newark Public Library's Facebook page. One of the questions I have here, maybe for all three panelists, be a comment and a question. Nicole Grimsley asks, we all agree in the problems, but what are the real viable solutions? Where are the alternative role models for the youth? And how do we highlight them in a way that's appealing to the youth? So if y'all want to take on all three or one of those.
One thing that we've been doing, we have to change policy. Before we can flip the whole board, we definitely have to affect policy. So as a matter of fact, next door in Manhattan, as part of the National Black Leadership Alliance, we actually had a resolution that we put before the council under, I think Inez Barron. I don't know if you all are familiar with her, but the resolution is for them to basically stop playing all this derogatory filth on the radio to our kids, to try to force their hand, or at least have it put out there where it's at least a discussion. It was actually successful in Wilmington, Delaware, and in Gary, Indiana, under the Clear the Airways Project, which is another organization I'm part of. But we basically around the country, we're trying to get this. We have people in there everywhere, and we're trying to push policy so they can at least. It's like a slow moving train. It doesn't happen overnight, but if you put it on the table and you get them to talking about it, we can slowly get them to start to see where we're coming from. Because even when you think about blaxploitation movies, it took them a decade to get those movies off the screen, and they literally worked a decade. It was only a handful of people who were actually like, we can't have this out here as messages and images to our people, targeting our people. It's the same thing with this music right now. And it's funny with Eric Adams, one of the rappers actually brought up, I don't know if it was a rapper or somebody else that brought up trap music, which is basically a derivative of the gangster music that we listened to back in the day. Drill music, thank you. Thank you for that correction. It was drill music, which is actually, I want to say it's a Chicago product, where the kids are basically on the microphone talking about murders they committed, and the other kids are basically reacting to those murders. So you had these murders going back and forth as a direct result of what's being said over a microphone on a record that's being sold by European radio stations or European record companies. But we have to go at them with policies. We have to make our presence known. The big thing for me as an educator is just educating these kids. Because if I get a room full of these kids, youth, I was hoping to have a few more here, but talking to them, they get it. When you talk to the kids, you present capitalism to them, wealth distribution, poverty, how it's crafted, and you give them the history, not just picking on their music, but telling them that I was the kid once, and I did, and I listened to the exact same thing you listened to. We have to educate the kids. We have to turn them into revolutionaries. And we have to let them know that, media literacy, you have to be literate of media, what you consume. And so it's education, it's also affecting policy from my vantage.
Since you're trying to move policy, and I could not say this, because I'm really into civics and people recognizing the individual and collective power. Do you have an institutionalized component to ensure that people understand how government works so they can help you leverage your position to get the policy that you're seeking to get?
I don't as an individual, but through the organizations I'm part of, we're building all of that. Another thing I want to add too is that, excuse me, there are plenty of conscious rappers out here, or actually artists that actually talk about the stuff that Public Enemy used to talk about. There's artists in Chicago and New York, but they're just being censored. And so our kids need to see that juxtaposition. This is not all that's out there. And it's kind of like, how can I put it? Your choices and your preference are basically crafted by the record companies. If they give you 10 songs on the radio every hour that basically degrade and devalue you, you pick from those 10 songs what your favorite songs are, as opposed to having a good mix or at least a balanced mix of what's actually out there. Like we literally have most of our artists are conscious artists, but they literally go and they handpick these artists that want to degrade for some money. So that's kind of what we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really quick, first of all, I enjoyed the panel. Thank you. I just wanted to run through something really quick, but I wanted to ask all of the participants a question. What are your favorite 3 MCs? And it's the reason why I'm asking that.
Favorite MCs?
What are your 3 favorite MCs? Start with the doc first.
I hate to say it, I'm old school.
Right, right.
Don Cornelius.
That ain't hip hop. That ain't hip hop either.
I came along a different era.
But you know what? It doesn't negate your message, and I appreciated your message. Yours, brother.
Cool. I've evolved, and it used to be Nas, used to be Mobb Deep. But as I've gotten older, Black Thought. I like Black Thought.
Mhm.
Definitely got to say Common. And there's actually a younger guy. I think he might be 30 now, but Ad 1 or Ad 2 in Chicago is an artist. I'm sorry. Ad 2 in Chicago is an artist that's out here now, and his album's a breath of fresh air. But that's kind of he kind of put me on the spot because I love hip hop. I listen to a whole bunch of artists.
And I'm
So
not finished.
I just picked like 3
No,
out of there.
Respect. Yes, you sir.
Old school, classic soul. I mean, I in terms of, just off the top of my head, I would say Public Enemy, Nas, in terms of conscious rappers, and probably Sugar Hill, going back to, to that era.
Took it back.
Yeah, it's relevant though. It's relative because my thing is, if we're speaking about hip hop, because from what I gathered from the discussion, again, which was a very enriching discussion, and I like what you said about the auditory, emotional, perception, absolutely. But part of the problem, I think, with the issues that we do have with hip hop is that there is not a healthy discussion between the older generation and the younger generation. So when we speak to hip hop, for instance, Linda quoted Nina Simone, which about 3 or 4 MCs have done her songs over. Lauryn Hill produced an album by Nina Simone. James Brown is the most sampled musician in hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
He's the most sampled. And somebody said something about, you said Wake Up. You did Wake Up. Right, and Sway, who's probably the #1 hip hop radio artist across the country, he plays that song every morning before the show comes on. So I say that because I think that it should be a natural discussion between it, because a lot of the things that we say, like you were talking about KRS-One, about initially with his first album, and the reason why he did the next album, right, that had My Philosophy on, and he became to Get Conscious, because his DJ was murdered. And it was the day before he did a concert here in East Orange at Martin Stadium. He cried on stage and the whole 9. And ever since that day, he's been doing conscious music. As a matter of fact, he might, quote unquote, live in Newark right now. So I have a whole bunch of questions, but that's the most important thing, that part of the issue is the failure of communication between the older generation and the younger generation.
I love that. One of the things that we want to do with our Celebrities at Risk initiative and being in the entertainment industry, and I've reached out to Jason E., who works with Nelly and Jermaine Dupri and those guys, is that we do want to bridge the gap, because we see that there's a gap, between the old school and hip hop as it relates to people in the industry. And I think this discussion needs to be had. And one of the things that we're talking about doing is doing a anti-violence, stop the killing world healing tour, where we can bring artists from the classic soul R&B as well as the hip hop industry to actually perform, and then use it as a a platform to bring about these types of discussions. You know what I mean? In fact, that's why we're here tonight, is because Linda invited me to be a part of this discussion, from an entertainment, platform, but also bringing in, the whole recovery piece and the whole therapy piece in terms of changing the mindset. So that's definitely a discussion that we definitely need to have. The other thing I think that goes along with the question that the Facebook person asked was our professionals staying in the community. A lot of times, it historically has been, once you get your degree, you leave the community, you go into the suburbs, or you go, you become, second class or high class citizens, and now you're no longer a part of the community from which you came, before you became professional or you got your degree. So I think that another thing that we that needs to happen is the professionals need to come back to the village, come back to the community. You know what I mean? And bring our information and our education back to the community. Like this, like events like this here needs to happen more often and in more different places. Because a lot of our children are people who need to hear this now. We're like preaching to the choir right now. But like if we did this like in the community center, you know what I mean? Or something like that, you know what I mean?
Tent,
huh?
under a tent outside.
Yeah, something like that. I think that way we can engage the community more. We have an annual reunion at Scudder Homes, every year. I think that we should make a part of that reunion a discussion like this, because you have the old, you got guys, we come from all over the country. We come back to the neighborhood, and there's a whole new generation of people that we don't even know, and we don't even have a discussion about what's going on and what we've done, and so forth and so on. So I think that's part of it.
We I have no idea.
Is it what's the name?
I'm not even gonna pretend.
Wu-Tang? Is it Wu-Tang?
No.
No.
That's why I
Wait.
didn't even bother. 80s,
Yeah, you go.
88. I wanted to say something real quick. I'm gonna talk to you afterwards because I do workshops. Me and one of my partners, we do workshops, whether they're virtual or in person, talking to kids. I actually this past summer we talked to 200 kids in Milwaukee. So we are reaching out to the kids. We're doing online workshops, whether it's in school or community center, but conversations with them kids about what we're talking about now. So I'll talk to you after this.
So we are coming to a close, but I have two questions, 3 questions. One is Facebook, right? Oh, it's a regular question. Okay.
So how you doing? My question is to Dr. Payne, correct? And you both present a unique perspective as well, so please contribute. But you would brought up earlier about this, basically it's like the long game, right? So it's a 10-year time frame in between from the 8 to, when you turn 18. And they've already planned on, the channeling of what students would go, to prison. So in my lifetime, I've learned that we are now battling systems. So it's a school system, it's the prison system. So with this 10 years that's being considered, the system is going to outlast or outlive some of the players that were instrumental in, putting this thing together. So now we're not able to battle a system by just people, right? Because this is like a different playing field. And also you talked about changing the beliefs, changing the behavior. Well, now we're also addressing ideologies. And so now it's an ideology versus an ideology. We are now, entering into another playing field, battlefield, for example, because once again, these ideologies are going to outlast the individuals. And we could talk, 150, Jim Crow, we talked about, what, 96, 76 years. So it outlived a lot of people that were part of this initiative. So my question is, do you have any ideas on some components of this machine, this system, or and even the ideology that could help to combat it? Because we're talking about systems, and any one individual, it wouldn't be as effective.
Very good question. Excellent question. I can think of one that we could do today. In 1995, right after the Million Man March, the Telecommunications Act was passed, coincidentally, because they had, politicians always go to the churches. They said they thought that was the means to which Black people were communicating. But they realized Black talk radio was what brought 1 million men to Washington, D.C. So they said, we got to do something about this. So then they passed the Telecommunications Act, and all these major companies start buying up all these little Black radio stations all over the country. If you look over the country, there are very few Black talk radio stations. Black talk radio reaches 93% of the Black community in this country. So that's something you can do right now. Some legislation to change, they reinstate the Telecommunications Act, because that was it's like Welsing said, they're playing chess and we're playing checkers. That's one thing that you can do.
In keeping with the law, with the act, anyone speak about the RAP Act and how the lyrics may be used against as evidence in certain criminal cases? And I have to give a shout out to one of the sponsors. I'm a former president of the Association of Black Women Lawyers. So.
I'm familiar with what you're speaking of. What's my take on it? It's funny because we spend a lot of time and energy going at some of these artists for basically putting out lyrics that are literally helping to terraform the mindsets and the subconscious of our kids to hate each other and to want to murder each other. And so even before this RAP Act, we were already on had an adversarial relationship with some of these artists. Now, in terms of them going to jail for things they say on a song, I don't have a concrete answer for you, but I have to add that, my context is somebody that's actually been fighting against some of these artists that are actually putting this stuff out, because I'm more concerned about the masses of our children that are being impacted by this music. I'm not really concerned that much about the wealthy artist or whatever that's putting stuff out. My take is, I'll be honest with you, is whatever happens to them, happens to them. I'm concerned about the kids that are literally being fed this stuff. As an educator, I'm in these schools and I see the impact of the boys and the girls, how they relate to one another, which he just spoke of, them smacking, fighting each other, how the girls are ripping each other's hair out at the drop of a dime, how they're being funneled into these jails. I don't even want to say exponentially more than the boys now, but they're being criminalized at a higher clip than the boys are now. And so now they got our girls going into the system the same as our boys now too. And so I'm seeing the impact with the Nicki Minaj's and the Cardi B's, these housewives shows that are showing women beating the hell out of each other. So it's affecting our kids. Our kids are impressionable, like he just spoke of. The behaviors are going to manifest if the subconscious has these beliefs, these thoughts. It's going to happen. So that's what we're dealing with. So my concern is not so much for these artists. And I saw that Jay-Z and I think Meek Mill were mounting this big thing to basically, that's his social justice initiative to protect the artists. I don't care about that. Protect our kids.
I look at that issue as a systemic issue, like the brother was saying behind us. A lot of times we have a tendency of blaming the victims. It's the industry that promotes those ideals and those ideas. And I think the purpose of it is to dumb down the masses of our society so that the number, what we were talking about, the population of those that are in power is decreasing, and the population of those of us that are not in power is increasing. So that means that the political landscape is changing. So there's a concern about that from the rich. See, there's a scripture that says, we war not against flesh and blood, but against principles and principalities and rulers of darkness in high places. We're talking about a system that promotes these ideals. They pay these people millions of dollars, to get those lyrics out, to pass that information on. You know what I mean? And then the lifestyle, which is what I spoke about earlier in that industry. They glamorize drinking alcohol. I was watching drinking alcohol and using drugs, or You know, like women, you know, they get dressed up in their finery and then they beating each other up. They glamorize this stuff. Like it's, you know, like it's the culture of our people. Like this is the way we're supposed to behave. You know what I mean? So it's a systemic thing, the way I see it. And until we address that, you know, we're not really getting at the source of what the problem is. You know, we have to, you know, do more in terms of self-help, self-development, and creating our own, you know what I mean, system by which we can get this information out or we can do our music.
Thank you, guys. We have two more questions, one here and one there, because we don't want to force the library people to stay late because they may need overtime. So,
Hi, I was just wondering if either of you could speak to this obsession and infatuation with Illuminati, like a lot of these rappers and a lot of Black entertainers. You know, I've been on social media lately and I've been seeing a lot about this. And what exactly is it? And is it something real or is it just a thing? Or your thoughts, please.
It's
It's
real.
for my kids will always ask me, Mr. Greenman, you believe in Illuminati? And it's supposedly the unseen hands, people that operate under the cover of darkness. Capitalists. Just look up the people that are financing the industry. As he said, it's systemic. Look up the individuals that are financing all of this malaise. They're not hard to find. They're really not that hard to find. The people, the power brokers, those people that have the billions of dollars that they're making off owning prison industries, plus the radio stations, plus the magazines, plus the movie industry and that sort of thing. I don't put too much weight into it. Just for me, it's kind of like a distraction when I can literally just go and Google and find out who the people are that are financing all of the hell in our communities.
My question is, how has technology enhanced the message representation in hip hop, one way or the other?
Can you hear me? Okay. I think technology has made it even worse. Now you can go directly to the person. You can go past the parent. The kid is in his room and he's watching hip hop on his computer. Mama's downstairs. They even have a whole different language. POS, parent over my shoulder. So they can communicate with you with your child without you even know what's going on. Technology is detrimental to our development. And like the brother was saying, that reality television. Our people actually watch that and start believing that's the way you should conduct yourself in public. And listen to, you can tell by the lexicon, the language reflects the society. Clapping back, spilling tea, showing shade. You hear the young people saying that kind of stuff all the time. Where are they getting it from? They're getting it from television. They're getting it from reality television. So technology. Oh, here's another thing. They can start. Did you hear the thing about the cars that they're stealing? What is it called? It's a very small car. What is it? Yeah, the Kias. I have guys who can't even read and write, but they can steal a Kia. They can steal your phone and reprogram it. Okay. I have a question I asked some of the inmates. Name 5 presidents of the United States. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. No, they weren't presidents. They're not getting educational information, but they're learning technology. And technology without control is detrimental.
I want to add one more thing before her question. Please support the Black bookstore in your city. We're losing them. Our Black bookstores, the place that curate our culture and our history. They bought 35 of my books. The purpose of those books is to disseminate this information. Our conversation is in those books, literally. Expanding upon from capitalism all the way down to the fight between our little girls, the prison system and all of that. We have to get the information out there. Our kids have to have these books in their hands. It's for the young adults, it's for the adults as well.
The kids need to stop eating all this junk food because it's not good for their body. They need to eat some fruit and vegetables.
The diet, that's definitely.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Because it has a lot to do with,
Definitely.
so this is the last, this is Joe Baton,
Oh.
the prayer.
Prayer.
Right about this time, I like to say a prayer for everyone out there. Being that we live in such a world, it's a wonder that any of us get the chance to pray. So I like to dedicate this prayer to all the sinners all over the world. And that means everybody. And it goes something like, honestly, I'm not going to sing. Our Father who art in heaven. Louder.
Thy kingdom come.
Go ahead.
Thy will be done. on As it is in heaven.
Thank you. So I want to thank everybody who turned out, and for those on Facebook, this has been very insightful. And I want to thank the sponsors, the Association of Black Women Lawyers, New Jersey, as Lisa Hendricks Richardson, former president, the Newark Public Library, and of course, the Friends of the James Brown African American Room. Thank you guys, and please tell people that they can probably see this on the website, on the Newark Public Library's website afterwards. It'll be available. And I also encourage you to do your homework and go and find these lyrics and read them, put them in a notebook, give it to a young person as a birthday present. Take care.
You know what I thought you was going to? What? I was training.
Excellent. Oh, yo,